Okay, so we begin talking about Avraham Avinu. First we're going to speak about the zrizut, the alacrity, the speed, the enthusiasm with which Avraham Avinu did whatever he did. And we see that, first let me tell you, we'll start with a little joke about speed, about a cute little joke about haste makes waste. Haste makes waste. You have to be careful. There was a guy who he was a nice fellow, he was a good husband, but he was not so helpful around the house. His wife told him, "Will you please go get a carton of eggs?" He went out, but he was also very involved with his friends, the Hasidic community. And he saw a bunch of guys in a wagon. He's in the shtetl in Poland. He says, "Where are you going?" They say, "We're going to our Rebbe, to go visit our Rebbe, to spend the Shabbos there." He says, "You know what, I better go. It's a good opportunity." He forgets to tell his wife, he forgets to tell his family. He forgets he went out to buy eggs. He runs off, and he comes back a few days later, and he realizes, "Ooh, my wife sent me to buy eggs a few days ago before I left home." So he runs to the store, and he runs home, and as he runs very quickly, he trips on the entrance of his house, and all the eggs go smashing to the ground, and everything breaks. And he tells his wife, "You see? Haste makes waste." So that's just a little joke. But truthfully, when you are excited or enthusiastic about something, you do it quickly. You get up early in the morning and do it. Let's see how we see it in this week's Parsha, the upcoming Parsha, Vayera, where Avraham Avinu sees three angels from the distance, text 1a. And he lifted his eyes and he saw, and behold, three men. They were angels in the guise of men. Three men were standing beside him, and he saw, and he ran toward them from the entrance of the tent, and he bowed to the ground. So why does he run? He runs because when you want to go do something good, you should run, not walk. You should do it with a lot of enthusiasm and speed. Then we continue to next 1b, the same concept. What does he do with the guests once they come? He feeds them. Well, what do you do when guests come? The best thing you can do when guests come is feed them. And Avraham rushed to the tent of Sarah, to Sarah, and he said, "Quickly prepare 3 sa'ah of meal, of flour, and fine flour, knead and make cakes." And to the cattle, Avraham ran, and he took a calf, tender and good, and he gave it to the youth. The youth was his son, Ishmael, and he hastened to prepare it. So we find that Avraham Avinu is, when he comes to deal with guests, he rushes, which teaches us that the way to approach something that you really think is important is to rush. Where do we see this? We see this also in his approach to offering up his son Yitzchak. Now, offering up his son Yitzchak as a sacrifice was the greatest sacrifice he could ever face. More than being asked to offer up his own life. Because he had already given his own life. He was offered the choice between bowing to idol or being thrown into the fiery furnace. And he chose being thrown into the furnace. His own life he was prepared to give to God, but it's much more difficult to give his son's life, of course. But that's what Hashem was asking of him in the test of the Akedah, the test of asking him to offer his son. So you would think somebody being asked to do something he really doesn't like doing, what's the natural reaction? To procrastinate. As a matter of fact, they say in the books of good, in the books of good management, the thing you should do first in the morning is the thing you don't like doing. Get that thing you dread doing or you don't want to do, get it off your head first thing. Why? Because usually that sits on your mind and it weighs you down, and we tend to procrastinate. And here we find in text number 2a, that when Avraham Avinu was asked to do the most difficult thing he would ever have to do in his life, which is to offer up his son Yitzchak as a sacrifice, what does he do? And Avraham arose early in the morning, and he saddled his donkey, and he took his 2 young men with him, and Yitzchak his son, and he split wood for a burnt offering, and he arose and went to the place of which Hashem had told him. In other words, he got up early in the morning. This tells us something about Avraham. It tells us his nature was, when he understood something was important, you do it as early as possible. And this becomes something that we know today, halachically also, is important. What do we know? We know that it says in text 2b, a bris, where we have many of those occasions, circumcision may be performed all day long. You're not allowed to do it at night. But any time during the day is technically okay. But the eager, what we call zrizim, those are the eager, makdimim le-mitzvot, they perform the mitzvah early. As we are told in the Torah, and Avraham arose early in the morning when he went to, even to do the most difficult task of his life, to sacrifice his son Yitzchak, he woke up early in the morning. So, we see from here that doing something immediately, doing something as early as possible, doing something as soon as possible is very important. And that's where the concept is, what you can do today, don't push off till tomorrow. Don't procrastinate. If something's important, do it right away. What's interesting is that you know that many times we've had bris millas here, we had circumcisions here, we do it in the afternoon. That is because one of the other important aspects of a bris is it should be done publicly. It should be a public proclamation of the faith, of the covenant being made with the child. So very often in today's day and age, today's society, it's more difficult to get a crowd early in the morning. So we tend to do it later in the day because that will make the bris more special, be more people. But otherwise, if you don't have that reason, the time to do a bris is in the morning.
It's the best time.
Best time is zrizim. Based on the concept that zrizim, those that are eager to do a mitzvah, makdimim, they come to do the mitzvah early. So now we have a question. That question is that we find that Avraham Avinu had a bris at what age?
99.
It's Chinese tea is very fine. But at 99, he has a bris. And it was pretty painful. Hashem wants to come and visit him. But we find that Hashem only came on the third day to visit him. So this is what we're going to discuss, but first we're going to have a discussion about the mitzvah of visiting the sick in general, which is a very fascinating mitzvah, the different aspects of it. So let's see here in the verses in the Pasuk, verse 3a, Hashem appeared to him, talking about appearing to Avraham, in the plains of Mamre, as he was sitting at the entrance of the tent when the day was hot. And then it says Hashem appeared to him, and immediately the Torah goes to a different aspect of the story, which is Avraham lifted his eyes and he saw, and there were 3 men standing beside him, as we said earlier. And he ran towards them from the entrance of the tent, and he bowed to them to the ground. So we don't really say anything about Hashem's visit. We talk about what happened when Hashem came to visit. But really, why did Hashem come on the 3rd day? You see in the Talmud, it tells us in text 3c, it was the 3rd day from Avraham's circumcision. And Hashem came to see how he was doing. Why the 3rd day? Third day we would expect because it's the most painful. But let's see here about the nature of this visit. Because it doesn't say that Hashem said anything to him. It said Hashem came to visit, and then right away it says that Avraham saw 3 people and he went to take care of them. That teaches us that taking care of guests is even more important than entertaining, so to speak, God when he comes for a visit. It's a very, very powerful lesson. But let's leave that lesson at the side now, just not to discuss that at length. But what we could discuss is that the Torah doesn't say what happened in that meeting when Hashem came. What did Hashem say? What happened? It just says right away that Avraham went to take care of his own guests. So what value does it have to visit a sick person if you don't even talk to him? And let's give the equivalent. What would be the value of going to see a sick person if he's really sleeping? Or if perhaps he's on drugs or on machines and he can't even, in an induced coma like we have today? Is there any value? So here an interesting comment from the Tosfos Harosh. As you can see at the side, he passed away in 1328, so you're talking 700 years ago. Right? Hashem appeared to him. It says Hashem came to visit the sick. This teaches that it is appropriate to visit a sick person even if there is no opportunity to talk with him. For example, if the patient is sleeping, it still helps him to know after the fact that so-and-so came to visit him. It doesn't matter what you said. The mere visit itself, this in itself, is of value, because it's going to make the person feel loved afterwards when he finds out. So if it's so important to visit the sick, even if you can't speak to them, why does Hashem wait till the third day? Why doesn't he come right away? And so there's this question that we have to deal with. Now let's take a look at what the mitzvah of visiting the sick is, and perhaps the question will be even more understood to us. Text number 6. So in general, we know that when a king makes a rule, does he have to keep it? I don't want to comment on the recent elections, but I will just say one thing, that there was a feeling sometimes in countries, not necessarily America, this feeling when it comes into a country is a very disturbing feeling. When people feel that the rulers feel that the rules that are there are not for them. They make the rules, but they don't have to keep to them. This used to be the problem in Russia. Everybody's equal, but some are more equal. This was possibly one of the feelings of the masses in America, which led to almost a certain kind of a rebellion in a way. And there was a feeling that there's a certain leadership that feels as if almost entitled, not commenting right, wrong, left, right. But when that feeling is generated amongst people, that creates a very powerful resistance. Now, you expect a real king makes a rule. Of course he doesn't have to keep the rule. It's almost like giving a policeman a ticket for speeding. But we are told that when Hashem makes his rules for us, his mitzvahs, he's actually just telling us what he does himself. And let's see how the Medrash puts it. The pasuk says, the verse says, he tells his words to Yaakov, his statutes and his judgments to Israel. And the Medrash comments on that verse from Tehillim. It says, Hashem is unlike man. Man commands others to do, but himself does nothing. But Hashem, what he does, he tells the Jewish people to do and keep. So in other words, every mitzvah we have has a parallel, so to speak, in God's behavior. Now, of course, Hashem doesn't take a box made out of leather and put on tefillin, but there's a concept, as every bar mitzvah, the Chabad bar mitzvah boy recites this discourse, at the bar mitzvah there's a concept which is similar to us putting on tefillin, which is, so to speak, God putting on tefillin as well. Whatever that means is not for the discussion now. But for example, when God asks us to give tzedakah, to give charity, what is charity? Charity is giving something to somebody even though he's undeserving. If he deserves it, that's a salary, that's not charity. When you give somebody a charity, it's because he doesn't deserve it. Hashem's keeping the world sustained is actually a form of charity. Although we consider ourselves undeserving, Hashem nonetheless provides us with that which we need. When he asks us to do charity, that's because he does charity. So when Hashem asks us to heal, to visit the sick, it's because he himself visits the sick, so to speak. And as we have here in text 7 from the Gemara, the Gemara says, the pasuk tells us, you shall go after Hashem. But is it possible to go in the ways of Hashem? Doesn't it say that Hashem is like a consuming fire? How can you get so close and follow Hashem? It's too powerful. Rather, the Gemara says what it means is you should follow in Hashem's ways. And just as Hashem visited the sick, as it says, Hashem appeared to Avraham in the plains of Mamre, so too you should visit the sick. In other words, it's a mitzvah because God behaves in this way. Okay, so we see it. Where do we see God visiting the sick? In this week's parasha. Avraham Avinu circumcised himself at 99 years old. That's a pretty painful operation. Hashem goes to visit him. What is the importance of visiting the sick? Let's take a look. What is the reward for one who visits the sick? He is saved from Gehenna, from purgatory. And what is his reward in this world? Text number 7a. I'm sorry, this is text 8a. And what is his reward in this world? So the pasuk says, Hashem will preserve him and keep him alive, and he will be praised in the land, and you will not deliver him into the desire of his enemies. What does that verse mean if we spell it out clearly? Says the Gemara, Hashem will preserve him from the evil inclination and keep him alive. That's a reference, he'll keep him away from suffering. And he will be praised on the land. That's a reference to that all will take pride in him. And you will not deliver him into the desire of his enemies. This means that Hashem will give him friends like Naaman's friends, that famous Aramean general who cured his leprosy. His friends told him what to do to cure his leprosy, to go to the prophet Elisha. So if Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick, is such a mitzvah, it's so up there in the hierarchy of mitzvahs, why is it, what is it that we're doing when we visit somebody sick? So interesting. Let's look what the Gemara says. Dimi says, anyone who visits a sick person causes him to live. Anyone who does not visit him causes him to die. Why is that? We could go from one perspective, perhaps. If you visit somebody, you give him energy, you give him a good feeling, you give him the internal desire to live and to get better. We know today what perhaps in the Gemara was known, but perhaps medicine did not really put enough emphasis on it all those years, is that besides for what medicine can do from the outside or from the inside, the person's mood and the person's enthusiasm, the person's frame of mind will be very, very important. We know in a very vivid example, in 1977, Lubavitcher Rebbe suffered a heart attack in the middle of the dancing on the first night of Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres. And the doctors wanted to take him to hospital. The Rebbe insisted that they allow him to stay in his own office. In the shul upstairs, he had an office. And they brought the equipment they needed to him. What was known only to a few doctors at the time was that you could treat a patient in the presence of privacy if you had access to the right equipment. But what the Rebbe was insisting on is that his healing required the kind of energy that he could only get in the presence of his own room. He said in this room, as so many people were helped, so many people had private audiences with him in this room for hours or nights on end. And this is where people poured out their hearts. This is where people got blessings. This energy in this room will be a very important part of my healing. And of course, we all know that part of the difficulty of getting healing in a hospital is going to the environment which is so sterile and cold and unwelcoming. And today, what they try and do in the better hospitals is make the atmosphere more welcoming. What we can do as human to human is to at least visit and make the person feel more heartened, make the person feel more encouraged to try and get themselves better. And this is something that cannot be downplayed. We know we have today what's called laughter therapy. You get somebody to laugh, it helps. We need people to be enthusiastic. When a person is down in the dumps, it's not very good.
What do you do with the people that visiting would create more aggravation?
If the visit is going to create more aggravation, stay away. Yeah,
because they feel like before they were powerful and stuff like that, and then people would see them in this decadence, and it's very hard for them to take it how they were before, and what they're like right now. So
you really have to know, is the person up to visitors? Do they want visitors or not? I saw very vividly when my grandfather, Alav Shalom, was old and not well. Towards the end of his life, the last few months of his life even, when people would come, he was, before that, Rabbi Hecht, the rabbi of the biggest, most powerful shul in New York, probably 50 years. Yet, when people did come to see him, although I guess he knew that he didn't look at his best, but somehow they were coming to him as the rabbi, and he would give them a blessing. He would sort of come back to you saw some of his old vigor. And when they left, even though he had family around him, but it's not the same. He was cared for and loved and so on, but he didn't have to have that. So there was some kind of an energy that came into him when he was back, so to speak, in the position of somebody coming to him for a blessing as a rabbi, or did a lot of it made a difference. So you have to know the individual. Another very practical aspect. Oh, so we're going to say that in a second. A concept. Ramban says in text 8c, a very practical thing when you come visit, bikur cholim ukidei sheyichabdu v'yirabtzu lefanav. The purpose of visiting the sick is so that the patient's room will be swept and cleaned, all his needs will be tended to, and the patient will be calmed by his friends. And the Gemara gives an example. In text 8d, once a student of Rabbi Akiva fell ill, the sages did not go to visit him. Rabbi Akiva did go to visit him. Because he swept and cleaned the premises, the patient lived. He said to Rabbi Akiva, "You have given me life." Rabbi Akiva left and said, "Anyone who does not visit the sick is considered to have murdered." In other words, if somebody's not visited, even today, by the way, you think it doesn't apply today?
Provided that you know.
Even today, if you know somebody's sick, going to the hospital, even if they're not fully conscious, when the hospital staff sees that somebody's coming and somebody cares, the chances are they'll take better care. If it's somebody that nobody ever visits, and they're just lying all alone in a hospital, so they can come late, they know nobody will ever notice if they get bed sores, they know they won't be caught out if they haven't treated them properly. If it's somebody that you see that somebody cares and comes and visits, so that's where we can really make a difference, if in a practical way, when we go. And that's one of the reasons for the mitzvah of visiting the sick. Now, there's another thing, and that is we should pray for them. And this is why there's another interesting halacha. Look at text 9. One should not visit the sick in the first 3 hours of the day. Why would you say, why not? Here's what is counterintuitive. Because a patient's condition is better in the morning. And therefore the visitor will not be moved to pray for him. You heard the guy's really sick, he's in the hospital, he goes there, let's say in the morning. The morning people very often feel better than later on during the day. He says, hey, he's not so sick. So they're going to pray for him in the shul, they want to make him Mishabech. He says, I was there, he's not so bad, it looks like he's okay. So don't come very early when he looks good. Nor should one visit in the last 3 hours of the day. For then the patient's sickness is more severe, and the visitor will lose hope and see no reason to pray for him. They'll say, oh, let's pray for the guy. I don't think there's anything to pray. Pray that he should have an easy transition, as they say. You know. Hello. Don't look at him when he really looks bad. Go in the middle of the day. You go in the middle of the day, you'll see he's sick, but he has no hope. You pray. The Ramah makes a note. One who visits but does not pray for the patient. Please think. If somebody visits and does not pray for the patient, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of visiting the sick. In other words, the prayer is very, very important. And when praying, one should include the patient among all the sick people of Israel and say, may Hashem have mercy on you together with all the sick people of Israel. And we do it. We make the Mishaberach. Mishaberach is Hashem who blessed our forefathers, should bless this sick person. B'toch sha'ar cholei Yisrael, we say amongst all the other sick people of Israel. In other words, what we're trying to do, I believe, is say we're not, you may say, well, the person may be sick, maybe he doesn't have enough points in his account in heaven, so to speak, to bring himself healing. So we say, let Hashem heal all the sick. Heal this person amongst all the sick in Israel. When you talk about the community always has enough. As a community, we always deserve, so to speak. There's always good people and better people. Individual maybe, so include him amongst all the sick people. Which will lead a question, a contemporary question. In today's remote world, we do so many things remotely via internet, via telephone. How should we treat this mitzvah of Bikur Cholim? Can you visit somebody by phone, a virtual visit, or does it have to be a physical visit? So listen here, there's an argument between the rabbis of our generation. Rabbi Hutner passed away, both rabbis have passed away, but they're contemporary halachic deciders. Passed away in the last 20 years. Rabbi Hutner says like this. The word bikur, you may think it means visit. He says, I would suggest that the word bikur does not mean visit, but inquiry. As in the verse, bikoret tihiyeh. In the Torah there's a word where it says bikoret means an inquiry should be made. So, bikur cholim means to inquire into the patient's condition. In this sense, there's no real difference whether the mitzvah is performed by a telephone call or via helping the patient out in some other way. required. However, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, no. He says, as for fulfilling, in text 10b, as for fulfilling Bikur Cholim by the way of a telephone call, this does not fulfill all the aspects of the mitzvah stated by the Torah and the Beit Yosef in the name of the Ramban. In other words, being motivated to pray on the patient's behalf. You don't see the guy. You don't get the feeling of... you don't get the feeling that there's somebody sick here and you say, oh, I feel so sorry for him. There's something much, there's a reason people travel for business. Even though there's an internet, even though there's telephones, even though there's video conferencing. Why do we still have business trips? Because there's a different energy. When you're face to face physically and the same person in the room, there's a different energy. So, therefore it is clear that although one fulfills the mitzvah to some extent, by showing interest in the patient's condition, has not totally fulfilled the obligation because of the other aspects of Bikur Cholim, namely praying on the patient's behalf. They are lacking. In other words, there's several aspects of Bikur Cholim. One aspect is to show that he's being careful, that people are asking about him, to make him feel good that people are asking about him. That maybe you can do by telephone. And there's the other aspect, to really get the feel of his condition and to feel motivated, empathy, to pray for him. When you hear on the phone a guy tells you what he's feeling like, it's not the same as if you go to his room and you see him hooked up to, God forbid, to a machine, or you see the look on his face, or you see, God forbid, after treatment his hair fall out, chas v'shalom, or something like that. You get a different feeling. And so there's some aspects you can do from the distance, some aspects you can't. So I guess you have to know what to do at which particular time. So, why did Hashem wait for day 3? This is the question. So here we're going to throw in text 11, there's a very interesting social, a note, halachic note, but based on social behavior. Text 11 says like this, from the Gemara. Rava, this great rabbi, he fell ill. On the first day of his illness, he requested that the matter not be made public, so as not to negatively affect his mazal. In other words, Rashi explains, they didn't translate it here, Rashi explains, maybe he'll be right away, maybe he'll be healed right away. Don't make a big issue out of it. Maybe Hashem will give him a healing. In other words, sometimes not highlighting a problem allows, so to speak, for it to be minimized, even cosmically, spiritually. Like we have the concept of when you worry about something and verbalize that worry, you create a bigger problem, so to speak, in the energy of the world. And now the problem is open, and now there's going to have to be a solution. Sometimes when you let the problem just be covered up, unspoken, so to speak, it's easier for it to be resolved. So when somebody's on the first day sick, don't talk about it too much. Don't make it into a big problem. Don't let other people talk about it also. After the first day, when he saw that the sickness was real, he had asked him to announce his illness in the marketplace. And he said like this, what can be? Some people hate me, some people love me. Listen to the logic. He said, anybody who hates me will rejoice. But it's written, you shall not rejoice you shall not rejoice in the fall of your enemy. So by them rejoicing when somebody else is suffering, their enemy is suffering, they're doing a sin. So their bad wishes on me don't have any power because they're sinful. Conversely, anyone who loves me will pray on my behalf. So there's can be nothing lost by the matter coming out and becoming publicized. On the same note, the Avraham says, you know why Hashem waited till the third day? Because he didn't want to disturb Avraham when he was still right after his operation. Text 12 says, Hashem did not visit Avraham until the third day so that they should not speak about his illness. When the great king arrives, there's much ado in all the world. You know, sometimes here in Thailand, you go on the highway and it stops. And why is it stopped? Because the royal family is going. Everything stops. When the royal family goes, you can't go quietly. There's the cars in front and the car behind. There's the beige Bentleys. There's a couple of them. That's the way kings' royalty travels. When Hashem comes, everyone's there. All the news outlets are there. There's a press conference. Hashem is coming with all the angels. Hashem, so to speak, the Avraham says, I didn't want to bring that whole commotion at the beginning. Sometimes when people have babies, women, we should only know hospitals from good things, which is giving birth, which can be done at home, but it's better to be many places where it's better to be in an environment where there's medical help in case it's needed. So very often, when people that haven't given birth don't realize, they say, "Oh, somebody gave birth right away." They want to go and visit. Wait a second. The birthing mother usually will want a day or two to themselves to be able to, recover somewhat from the experience, and then they do appreciate guests, but a little bit later on. So you could say, in a certain sense, the whole hoo-ha of Hashem's godly visit, Hashem, he waits till the third day to give Avraham a little bit of time to come to himself. Okay, but there's another aspect, and that is the third day. Why did he wait the third day? Because that's the day Avraham needs it most. Why does he need it most? Text 13a. The Maharsha says, on the third day of the circumcision, the weakness is most severe. So Hashem waits till the day he needs it most, and he comes on that day. And this Rashi also, the commentary on Rashi in text 13b says the same thing. It is likely that God did not visit him until the most painful day after the circumcision, which is the third day. As it is written on the third day, when they, the people of Shechem, were in pain. Later, when the sons of Yaakov kill out the people of Shechem after they circumcised themselves, it says they waited till the third day, when they were in the most pain and they would be least able to fight back. By the way, there's an interesting custom that some Hasidic groups have. It's not a Chabad custom at all. That on the third day of the bris, they make a gathering, marking Hashem's visit to Avraham and marking the fact that it's the day that the healing is needed most, and to have a gathering of people that say brachas and say words of Torah. Till today, some people do that. However, let's be honest. We're talking about Hashem's visit. All the answers were given. Hashem didn't want to make a burden, make a loud noise. Hashem, this is Hashem. Hashem, if he wants to come without any noise, he can do it. To wait till the most painful day, but if he comes on day one, he won't get to the most painful day. If Hashem comes and he heals him, won't it be the best thing if he heals him on day one? I mean, Avraham did a great sacrifice. He did this major operation at 99 years old. You don't think Hashem maybe could come on the first day or right after he's circumcised and take away the pain? Or go one step further? Maybe Hashem could have made it shouldn't even be painful. Why does it have to be painful? He's doing a mitzvah. Let there be a miracle. God made a miracle and he was in the fiery furnace, right? And he didn't get burned. So why can't he cut his skin and not be hurt? Well, we see he did hurt. And it says Hashem came on the most painful day. Why did he wait till then? And why did he get hurt in the first place? So here, we're going to discuss something that sheds and places some beautiful light. Till now we've discussed the mitzvah of visiting the sick, and that's a very important mitzvah. But now we're going to relate it back to Avraham Avinu. Why doesn't God do what he tells us to do? He does it, but why does he wait till day 3? And why doesn't it become a painless kind of experience to have the bris? And we're going to speak here about the whole concept of mitzvah, the way it applies to us, starting from the time of Avraham. But first let's talk about the concept of mitzvah, which is connection. And here they've given for us a parable of a large ship that's approaching a port, and amidst the crowd that's here to welcome the ship, perhaps it's a maiden voyage or whatever it is, there's a little boy waving. Somebody says cynically to the boy, "You think anybody's going to notice you waving?" He says, "Yes, I do think so, because my father is the captain." And of course the father is waiting impatiently to see his young son who's on shore, and he's looking out for him, and certainly he'll notice the waving. So when you're connected to somebody, you care about every little thing they do. And that's what a mitzvah is. Text 14, what is a mitzvah? The Hebrew word mitzvah is etymologically, means this word has the same roots related to the Aramaic word savta, which means joining or attachment. Or in today's modern Hebrew, we talk about it tsevet. Tsevet is a crew. because they're people that are joined together in a common goal, in a common mission. So tzavta is from the word of attachment. Mitzvah comes from that same meaning, which means whoever performs a mitzvah becomes attached to the essence of God. Who issues that particular command? How are we going to connect to God? How are we going to connect to God? The way we connect to God is by our input, by our investment, by our efforts. What are our efforts? Our efforts have to be felt. If it comes easy, it means our efforts are not really involved, are not really invested deeply enough. We haven't really earned it. We have here a story that they share with us. Somebody who came to the shul collecting charity, and the guy gives him a coin. Then he calls him back later on. A few minutes later, he gives him another coin. Calls him back a few minutes later. He says, "If you want to give me 3 coins, why didn't you just give it to me in the first place?" He says, "Because each time I put my hand in the pocket to give you a coin, it was hard for me. And I wanted to have." I kept saying, "I should keep the money for me. Why should I give it to you?" Each time I felt I was experiencing the mitzvah of tzedakah in a deeper way. So mitzvahs have to be felt. The fact that mitzvahs don't come easy, and sometimes they're even painful, that does not mean to say, "Oh, Hashem doesn't like me, and that's why He makes it difficult to me." Not at all. It's because Hashem does love us, that He gives us the opportunity to invest in it. In other words, when you let's take a look here at human nature. There's a statement in the Gemara, the Talmud says, "Rotze Adam bekav shelo, mitisha kabin shel chaveru." A person prefers his own earned one measure of something he earned himself more than 9 measures of something given